Sometime in the late 60s, a civil war would begin within the science fiction community. On one side stood the old guard, who looked for good, clean stories about good, clean science and engineering. On the other side stood a movement of young radicals that said science fiction could be every bit as revolutionary, every bit as abstract, every bit as sensual or gritty as any other art. Their works would be called the New Wave. But before we can talk about the New Wave, we have to talk about some of the authors who led up to it. Oh, that's right, baby! Extra Sci-Fi's back. This season of Extra Sci-Fi is sponsored by the phenomenal folks at CuriosityStream, the world's first streaming service dedicated to the lifelong quest to learn, explore, and understand. To check out their excellent educational content free for 30 days, use the promo code EXTRACREDITS at the link below. The New Wave movement in sci-fi was the final break from the Golden Age style of writing. It came amidst the anti-war protests and the hippie counterculture. It drew heavy on the work of the Beat Generation and found influences in the abstract art and impressionist movements, because it wanted to take sci-fi out of space and put it in our backyards. It strove to be more literary, more symbolic, and more psychological than its predecessors. It argued that science fiction of the past had three major flaws. First, that it presents us with stories about radical technological change, but never acknowledges that with great technological leaps, or great spans of time, the change in humans themselves might be as great or greater. After all, today the way we think might actually be closer to that of an alien from a society of a similar technological level than it would be to an ancient Greek or medieval peasant. Second, it felt that sci-fi had been too constrained in both style and content. The New Wave brought in sex, it brought in drugs, and it brought in more studied writing. It decided that characters had to have depth and should be well-rounded personalities. They could have flaws, struggle with depression, battle addiction, just be lost, or merely listless. New Wave played with form, bringing a much more literary sense of style to science fiction writing, showing that sci-fi wasn't just a means to convey a story, but a thing of beauty itself. And it also brought symbolism to science fiction, providing layered stories whose point could be analyzed, discussed, and debated. And third, it said that science fiction needn't have a slavish devotion to science. J.G. Ballard, one of the mainstays of the movement, famously said, "Accuracy, that last refuge of the unimaginative, doesn't matter a hoot." New Wave felt that science fiction was, by its very nature, speculative, and that no piece of sci-fi was going to actually be 100% right. And in trying to be, in exploring only the things that we at the time thought of as possible, rather than all of the things that were imaginable, we missed out on many aspects of human nature. The New Wave philosophy said that reason isn't all that makes up the human experience, and for that matter, it isn't all that makes up a human being. So we'd better stop making human characters purely rational, and only creating stories about problems that can be solved with logic. And this is where Ray Bradbury comes in. Though he wasn't part of the New Wave, he came in well before it. But to me, he prepared part of the science fiction audience to be ready to embrace it. If you read through the pages of The Illustrated Man, you'll find it filled with psychological issues. It touches on depression and suicide, stress and poverty. It deals in the fantastic, the psychedelic, and theological. And its stories address human themes, like race, religion, and, surprisingly often, family life and the raising of children. Bradbury himself often said he wasn't a science fiction writer. He said he wrote fantasies or myths. Later, he would say he was a magical realist, or simply a magician who happened to write down ideas. But why? Because of the same rejection of the focus on science and gadgets that the New Wave writers would state outright a decade and a half later. And so his work still stood as a bridge point for many readers. It's still filled with rocket ships and time travel, distant planets and space aliens, but within those familiar trappings, it was really about something more. It was trying to do something greater in terms of themes and tone. It was trying to bring in the human and the emotional. Plus, it did more linguistically and symbolically, pulling more from Shakespeare and Frost than from amazing stories. And the later you go into his work, the more of it takes place on Earth, often involving the fantastic and the allegorical, as in Something Wicked This Way Comes. Though in truth, we see this tendency all the way back to what he called his one true science fiction book, Fahrenheit 451. Making the argument that there was as much to think about, as much to find wonder in right down here on Earth, as there was out there. But there's still a long way to go before we get to the weird, wonderful movement that blew the doors wide open on what sci-fi was. We have to trace it to a darker, deeper, and more addled place. So join us next time as we talk about the antecedent to the New Wave, the movement's anxious uncle, Philip K. Dick. Zoe, start charging those electric sheep! Thanks so much to CuriosityStream for sponsoring this season of Extra Sci-Fi. Their dedicated platform, all about the love of learning, is something we at EC enjoy and are really proud to get behind. They've got thousands of documentaries and nonfiction titles from some of the world's best filmmakers, spanning science, history, technology, and nature. One of which, that you will not at all be surprised that I've been enjoying, is called The Secret Life of Cats, where they follow a kitten all the way to full-grown floofy feline. I've now learned all of your secrets, Zoe. Haha! I'm getting to that part. And until January 5th, 2020, they're offering 40% off their annual plans and gift cards for all this geeky goodness. Plus, if you head to curiositystream.com/extra credits right now, and use the code extra credits, of course, you can get your first month absolutely free.